You know what hurts a man the most? It's not when you're angry, it's not when you cry, it's not even when you scream at him for not valuing you. What really cuts him is when you stop. Because in that silence, in that calm, he realizes he doesn't own your energy anymore. And trust me, that's when the regret begins to eat him alive. See, men don't always wake up when you're pouring your heart out. They wake up when you've got nothing left to pour, when your effort is gone, when your voice is quiet. That's when his comfort zone starts collapsing. It's not the drama that shakes him, it's your detachment. That shift from chasing to choosing yourself. That moment when you show him, you don't have me just because you had me. And that is the wound that lingers the longest. A man doesn't feel the deepest regret when you cry or chase. He feels it when you stop caring. This is a truth many overlook, because on the surface, it seems like strong displays of emotion should have the most impact. Tears, anger, long conversations about what's missing. All of that looks powerful, but to him, it still feels like attention. It still shows you are invested, still proves he has some level of control over your emotions, and that is often misinterpreted as reassurance rather than consequence. But the moment your energy shifts, when you stop asking, stop explaining, stop demanding, something changes. That silence is louder than all the shouting combined. It tells him without words that his actions or lack of effort have cost him the thing he thought would never walk away. When a man doesn't value you, he operates under the illusion that no matter how much he takes for granted, you'll always be there. He may not admit it, but deep down, he feels a sense of security in your presence. He assumes the cycle will continue. You'll hurt, you'll express it, you'll forgive, and life goes on. But when you stop caring, you break that cycle. You remove the comfort of knowing your love and attention are guaranteed, and that absence creates a void. In that void, he finally feels the weight of what he has risked and often lost. This indifference hits harder than any confrontation because it is no longer about punishment or teaching him a lesson. It is simply about your energy no longer feeding his world. You're not reacting, not waiting, not fighting for him. That's when the balance shifts. He starts questioning himself, not because you're demanding change, but because your lack of care makes him see he is no longer significant in the space he once dominated. The very thing he undervalued becomes the thing he desperately misses, and that realization doesn't fade quickly. When you stop caring, it also signals a level of strength he underestimated in you. He thought he had time, thought you would always fight, but instead you chose peace over chaos. That choice hurts him more than your anger ever could, because it shows you found a life where he isn't necessary. And that is the kind of pain a man feels when he finally realizes that not valuing you cost him the one thing he thought he'd never lose. What cuts a man is not your words of pain, but your silence of indifference. Words, no matter how heavy or emotional, can be dismissed, debated, or deflected. A man can tell himself you're overreacting, too emotional, or just venting. He can listen to your pain and still walk away thinking nothing has changed, because in his mind, as long as you're still speaking, you're still connected. He may even find comfort in knowing that you care enough to express your hurt, because it reinforces the idea that he still matters in your world. But when you stop talking, when your voice fades and you no longer bring up what's bothering you, that silence carries a message he can't escape. It doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it simply says, "You no longer hold that place in me." Silence becomes powerful because it is final. In a way, words are not. It's not a negotiation tool. It's not an attempt to be understood. It's a withdrawal of energy. For a man who has grown accustomed to your emotional presence, your indifference feels like abandonment. He realizes he no longer influences your inner world. He is no longer the reason for your excitement, your frustration, or even your disappointment. Instead, he becomes irrelevant. And for someone who once held your attention, irrelevance is the deepest wound. A man may resist your words of pain because they force him to confront his actions, but he can always avoid them by tuning you out. Silence leaves no escape. He can't argue with it, can't twist it, can't minimize it. It lingers with him, echoing louder than anything you could say. The absence of your voice forces him to confront his own, because now he's the one left wondering, questioning, and replaying moments. This indifference is not coldness for the sake of punishment. It's the natural result of giving your best, speaking your truth, and realizing it no longer serves you to keep trying. Silence becomes a boundary. It says, I won't fight to be valued. I won't compete to be heard. And when that boundary appears, it shifts the dynamic completely. What once was his comfort, knowing you cared enough to voice your pain, becomes his discomfort. What once reassured him now becomes a reminder that he has lost something irreplaceable. Would you like me to keep the same tone and pacing for the rest of the points, so they all sound like one flowing speech when combined? A man values what he fears to lose. When you no longer try, he sees the cost. This truth plays out in almost every relationship dynamic. While you are still invested, while you are still putting effort into showing up, reaching out, and making things work, he feels secure. He may take that effort for granted, assuming it will always be there regardless of how he treats it. Your constant presence gives him the illusion of permanence, like your energy is a resource he can draw from endlessly. But the moment you stop trying, when you no longer initiate, no longer remind him of what he should be doing, no longer fight for his attention, a shift happens. The safety net he leaned on disappears, and that absence makes him feel the real value of what he once had. Loss is one of the most powerful motivators for human behavior, and men are no exception. When you are present, your effort becomes invisible, something expected rather than appreciated. But when you step back, the void reveals how much of the relationship was sustained by your energy. He starts noticing the silence where your messages used to be, the empty space where your presence once filled his days, the missing care he thought he would always have access to. It is only then that the cost becomes clear to him, not through lectures or reminders, but through the absence of what he had taken for granted. The fear of losing you is often stronger than the comfort of having you, and this is where regret takes root. It dawns on him that your effort was not infinite, that your patience had limits, and that love without reciprocity cannot sustain itself forever. He realizes too late that the stability he enjoyed was built on your willingness to give. And when that willingness is gone, he feels the fragility of what he assumed was permanent. What makes this realization sting even deeper is that it's not dramatic, it's subtle. You didn't announce you were done trying, you simply stopped. And that quiet withdrawal speaks volumes. A man who never truly valued your effort while he had it begins to see its worth only when he faces the reality of life without it. That is when he understands that what he feared losing has already slipped away, and the cost of neglecting you is far greater than he ever imagined. Respect and effort matter more than love alone. Without them, his comfort turns into loss. Love is often seen as the foundation of a relationship, but it cannot stand on its own. A man may feel love for you in his own way, but if he doesn't show it through consistent respect and effort, that love begins to lose meaning. What keeps a connection alive is not just the emotion, but the demonstration of that emotion in daily actions, in how he listens, in how he prioritizes, and in how he treats you when no one else is watching. Without these expressions, love becomes hollow, and what once felt secure eventually feels like neglect. Respect is the element that makes love safe. It ensures that even when disagreements arise, you are not belittled, dismissed, or made to feel small. Effort is what gives love life, because it shows that he is choosing you again and again, not simply coasting on the comfort of having you there. When those two pieces are missing, his comfort is temporary, because it rests on the false belief that your presence doesn't depend on how you're treated. Over time, comfort without respect or effort begins to crack, and the very security he took for granted turns into his greatest loss. A man may think that saying, "I love you," is enough to sustain the relationship, but words without actions eventually lose their power. You can't feel valued just by hearing the right phrases when the behavior contradicts them. Love without effort feels lazy, and love without respect feels unsafe. The absence of these qualities makes you withdraw, and when you withdraw, his comfort disappears. He suddenly sees that love alone was never enough to keep you, because love has to be backed by actions that honor and protect it. The tragedy for him is that realization often comes too late. He recognizes the importance of respect and effort not when he still has the chance to practice them freely, but when your patience has run out and you've already pulled away. The very things he failed to offer now become the things he wishes he had given consistently. His comfort, once built on the illusion of permanence, transforms into regret, because what he failed to maintain through respect and effort is exactly what he ends up losing. And if you've ever wondered how to flip that switch, how to go from being overlooked to being unforgettable, pay close attention, because the truth is, you don't need to make him value you. You just need to value yourself enough to walk away when he doesn't. Pulling away with dignity triggers more reflection than pleading for his attention. When you beg, chase, or fight to be noticed, you might think you're showing how much you care, but to him, it often reads as reassurance. It tells him you're still invested, still available, still willing to tolerate less than you deserve. The more you plead, the more he feels he can delay change, because your effort keeps feeding the connection. But when you step back gracefully, without drama, without announcements, that quiet shift carries a weight he cannot ignore. It communicates that you have chosen peace over conflict, self-respect over validation, and that message lingers long after words fade. Dignity has power because it comes without explanation. You're not trying to convince him, not arguing about why he should value you, not proving your worth. Instead, you let your actions do the talking. That silence, that distance, is not rooted in punishment. It's rooted in self-respect. And when a man who once had easy access to your attention suddenly feels that door closing, he begins to reflect. He wonders where the warmth went, where the effort went, why the energy he once counted on has disappeared. That reflection doesn't come from your words, but from the space your absence creates. Pulling away with dignity also changes the dynamic of control. When you plead, you hand him the power to decide when and how to respond. But when you withdraw calmly, you reclaim that power. You're no longer waiting on his recognition or chasing his validation. You're showing him that your worth isn't tied to his acknowledgement, and that shift forces him to confront his own behavior. He can no longer hide behind excuses, because your quiet withdrawal doesn't give him anything to push against. The beauty of dignity is that it lingers in his mind. Anger can be dismissed, arguments can be forgotten, but dignity is unforgettable. It makes him see the gap between the way he treated you and the way you chose to carry yourself. That gap is where his regret grows, and in that regret, he begins to realize that what he once overlooked was not only valuable, but irreplaceable, because your strength in walking away with grace speaks louder than any plea for his attention ever could. Men often confuse availability with permanence, but when you remove yourself, reality hits. As long as you are there, giving your time, showing up, answering his calls, or tolerating his lack of effort, he assumes this pattern will never change. He takes your presence as a guarantee, not realizing it is a choice you make every single day. The mistake lies in mistaking consistency for permanence, as though your love, patience, and loyalty are endless. But when you step away, when you no longer allow yourself to be taken for granted, that illusion shatters. He sees that what he thought was secure was only ever borrowed time. Availability gives him comfort. It makes him think he has space to delay, room to take you lightly, and endless opportunities to fix things later. He doesn't feel urgency because he thinks you will always be around. But permanence is not real unless it's earned through respect, effort, and appreciation. The day you pull back your energy, he begins to notice the cracks. The missed calls that once felt casual now feel like silence. The absence of your presence reminds him of the weight you carried in his life. He finally feels the loss, not because you shouted it at him, but because the rhythm of his world no longer includes you. This moment becomes a turning point. Reality doesn't strike when you are still explaining, complaining, or waiting. It strikes when you've already chosen to stop. And that is when regret cuts deepest. He realizes that permanence was never his to assume, it was his to earn, and by failing to value you, he failed to secure it. That realization is often more painful than any fight because he understands he was living in a fantasy of security while you were slowly deciding to leave it behind. The lesson in this is that presence is powerful, but absence is defining. When you are available, he only sees what you give. When you remove yourself, he sees what he has lost. That clarity hurts him in a way your words never could, because it forces him to confront the truth. Your permanence was never promised. It was always conditional on how he valued you, and once it's gone, no amount of wishing can bring back the security he once thought was guaranteed. A man feels the deepest sting when he realizes he wasn't replaced, he was released. Many assume jealousy is the greatest pain, that the thought of someone else taking your place is what cuts the deepest. And while that may sting, what truly shakes him is understanding that you didn't leave him for another. You left him for yourself. You didn't move on because someone else stepped in. You moved on because he failed to step up. That difference changes everything. Replacement suggests you still needed someone, that he was simply swapped out. Release shows you no longer needed him at all, and that is a wound to the ego far greater than rivalry. When a man is replaced, he can point to the new person as the reason. He can tell himself the story that you were taken, that it was about competition, and in some twisted way, that still keeps him relevant in your life. But when you release him, when you simply let go and choose peace over his presence, he sees that it was his own actions, or lack of them, that cost him the relationship. There's no one else to blame, no one else to compete with, no distraction to hide behind. He has to face himself. Release carries a finality that replacement never does. It means you no longer saw value in holding on, that the bond you once fought for became too heavy to carry. It tells him you found strength in letting go rather than clinging to someone who didn't value you. That kind of independence is difficult for him to process because it undermines the comfort he had in believing you couldn't walk away. Realizing that your freedom mattered more to you than his presence unsettles him in a way jealousy never could. This recognition lingers because it forces him to confront the truth. He wasn't pushed out by another man, he was let go by you. That difference strips him of excuses and highlights his failure to cherish what he had. And while replacements can bruise a man's pride, release crushes it. It leaves him questioning not only the relationship but also his own worth, because the message is clear. You didn't need to find someone better. You simply needed to remember your own value and walk away. That is the pain that follows him long after you've gone, the sting of knowing he wasn't replaced. He was simply no longer chosen. The true pain comes when he sees another man treating you the way he should have. For a long time, he may not have noticed the little things you wished for: attention, respect, effort, or affection, because he assumed your love would always be enough to keep you there. He became comfortable in the security of knowing you were his, forgetting that love alone doesn't erase the need for consistency and care. But nothing shakes him quite like watching someone else give you the very things he withheld. That sight forces him to confront not only what he lost, but also the fact that it could have been him if he had chosen differently. It is one thing to lose you in silence, to wonder what you're doing without him, but it's another to see you happy in the hands of someone who understands your worth. It highlights his failure in a way nothing else can. Every compliment you receive from another man reminds him of the words he didn't say. Every gesture of kindness reminds him of the effort he didn't make. Every moment of joy you share in someone else's company reflects the opportunities he wasted. That mirror is brutal because it doesn't just show him that you moved on, it shows him how easily he could have kept you if he had valued you when he had the chance. The hardest part for him is realizing that your new happiness is not about revenge, but about freedom. You didn't settle for less after him, you found more. That truth is unbearable because it forces him to acknowledge that his neglect pushed you into a life better than the one he offered. Another man treating you right becomes undeniable proof that his excuses, his delays, and his lack of effort were choices, not circumstances. He could have chosen to love you that way, but he didn't, and now he has to live with the consequences. Seeing you valued by another strips away the illusion that he was irreplaceable. It reminds him that love is not just about having someone, it's about keeping them through action. And when another man succeeds where he failed, the pain is not just losing you, it's losing the version of himself that could have been enough if only he had valued you when it mattered. The deepest hurt for a man doesn't come from your anger, your tears, or your words. It comes from the moment he realizes he had something rare and he let it